Worthy ones, don't give in to limitations. What's up, is Gene, this word to be great. And I'm here to help you build your self-discipline so you can achieve your greatness. Don't give in to the limitations. A lot of us grow up and we adopt limitations that are now affecting us. We have something we want to accomplish in life, but we limit ourselves. We have given into limitations that are holding us back. We have given into limitations that told us that whatever success we desire, we cannot have it in our life because our mind is chained with limitations. And that's why I want to talk to you today about how to overcome those limitations. When I was growing up out there in my hood, and I remember that in middle school, that's probably was the most challenging time in my life because I was out of elementary school. In elementary school, you have dreams of doing stuff. You feel you can accomplish anything. You still have a childlike faith. You have a very young mind. But when you get in middle school, that's when you start hearing more about limitations and you start seeing things and people try to get you to do things because you're at that age where you're very susceptible to peer pressure and all those different things. I had this one particular friend of mine that he didn't grow up in my neighborhood, but he grew up in a neighborhood not that far from me, and we're gonna call him Travis. Now, Travis was cool. I used to talk to him all the time in class. I had him. I was in class with him in 6th grade, 7th grade, and in the 8th grade. And Travis was dark skinned. He had gold teeth in his mouth, and you would never see this guy not clean. He always had on some new Jordans. He always had on some nice clothes. And Travis was a guy that sold drugs. I'm just keeping it real. But one thing that I will tell you is that we had some similar friends, and we also knew older guys that was in our hoods that knew each other. And sometimes when Travis and I were at school, we'd hang out, we would hear some of the same conversations from some of these older individuals. And it was always conversations about limitations. Hey, man, you can't make no money out here unless you're selling drugs. Hey, man, the chance of you getting out of here unless you're an athlete or you're a rapper or somebody hit the lottery is very slim. So, you got to get your money right now. You got to do what you need to do right now. That's the only way you're going to make it out here on these streets. And, when you're growing up in those type of environments, that type of messaging is very appealing because you are seeing the limitations. You see people strung out on drugs. You see people, doing a lot of time. There are people losing their lives. So there's so much going on that makes those limitations seem like a reality. So I said to myself, you know what? This does not have to be my reality. It is real. These things are happening, but I'm sure that there are people that grew up in the hood that have been successful. Now, I did play basketball. I loved playing basketball. I practiced all the time. And I remember one day I got this thing. I bought a new basketball, and it gave me I think a 2-month subscription to like these slam magazines. And these magazines will feature NBA basketball players and talk about their life stories. So I remember I taught my mom to help me get this subscription. I got the 3 months free. And so I used to get these magazines in the mail. And I never forget when I got my first Slam magazine, I started reading through it. I discovered that a lot of those NBA players grew up in an area like me. They didn't have fathers, but what they did to overcome the limitations of the environment is they develop a strong work ethic when it pertains to basketball, as well as taking their butt to class, which was something I was struggling with. So I started to emulate that. I said to myself, you know what? If these guys can be successful and they grew up just like me, obviously the limitations that I'm hearing from people in my environment, they are not totally true. So that's what I started doing. I started going to class. I started working on my basketball skills. Every time you would see me in my hood, I was always dribbling that basketball. You can ask anybody I grew up with, they would tell you, they called me Junior back at home, but they would say, Gene always had that basketball. It don't matter where he went. The reason I had that basketball is because I was challenging my limitations. Now, my friend Travis, on the other hand, he gave into those limitations. He was selling drugs. He was getting everything right now. He didn't have no delayed gratification. And ever since I left the hood, when I got out of high school, I went out to college to play college ball and stuff. I lost track with Travis. I haven't talked to that man in years. Well, fast forward to this past weekend or the weekend before. I was in Houston going home visiting family, and I'm driving in my hood, and I'm having all these memories. I'm thinking about all this stuff. And as I get further down the road from the freeway, I look to the right and I see this guy that I know this walk. See, I know the walk because I remembered in middle school. And I get closer and I look at this guy and I notice that it was Travis. Now, of course, we're older now. He's probably a year older than me. But I swear he looked like he was 70 years old. You see, Travis, I'm always used to him clean. I'm used to Travis having those gold teeth. I'm used to Travis wearing the new Jordans, having new clothes and all these things. But at that moment when I seen him, he looked like he was doing the very drugs he used to sell. And I said to myself, you know what? Travis gave into those limitations. He allowed those limitations to define his life. And because of those limitations, he's still in the hood. Because of those limitations, he never reached his potential. Because of those limitations, he is living a life at a mediocre status. And see, a lot of y'all like my friend Travis. You have given into the limitations. You have allowed the limitations to define your life. You're not writing that book that you've been dreaming of because of limitations. You're not going after that dream of having your own business because of those limitations. So it's time for you to get rid of those limitations so you can realize the greatness that's inside of you. So how do you start to get rid of those limitations? Number one, you got to know in your mind and in your heart, what is the major limitations that's holding me back? And you have to be real about those. Is it their skin color? Is it something somebody said to you? Is it your environment? What limitations have you adopted? And once you figure out what those limitations are, write them down, because it's one thing when something is in your head, but it's another thing when you can put it down on paper. Because when you write that limitation down on paper, you can do the second thing, and that's to challenge the limitation. You see, when you have those limitations written down and you can see them, this gives you an opportunity to challenge them logically. You see, most of the time we have our limitations in our head, we are thinking about them emotionally. And because we have this emotional attachment to this limitation, we start to believe that it's true and we allow it to define us. But when you write down a limitation and you can challenge it logically, it allows you to see it from a different perspective. So as you're looking at those limitations, I want you to ask yourself, is there anybody that you may admire that had that same limitation that is now having a successful life? Because whatever that person did, it is proof to you that you can do it as well. But in order for you to do so, you have to rid yourself of that limitation by challenging it. And the third thing I want to encourage you to do is to start taking action. You see, when I had my limitation that I might be stuck in the hood, that I might have to sell drugs, there was no way out. But then when I started reading those slam magazines and I saw there was a way out, I could get good at my basketball skills. I could start going to class on time. And that's what I did. I started taking action. You see, by practicing everyday basketball, by having that dream, that vision, and going to class like I was supposed to, I was developing a self-discipline that will allow me to realize that dream in my life. And that's exactly what happened. I did realize my dream of playing college basketball. I've done a lot of things that I wanted to do, but because the only reason that was possible is because I challenged my limitations and then I took action against them. You see, you will never, ever overcome those adopted limitations until you start to challenge them, until you start taking action towards them. So I want you to challenge you to find one small thing you can start doing today to challenge that limitation so you can get rid of it, so you can go after the goals and dreams that's in your heart. So rid yourself of those limitations because you are worthy to be great. If you're somebody you struggle with limitations and you need some help, my new book, Word to Be Great, How to Build Self-Discipline and Achieve Your Greatness, is a guide that can help you to overcome those limitations. You see, this is not just a book. It is a workbook in itself. It has so many guided self-assessment questions that will allow you to challenge those limitations so you can start developing the self-discipline that will allow you to achieve your goals and dreams. So I want to encourage you to get a copy of my new book by going to Amazon and type in Gene Mosley and the title, Worded to be Great, How to Build Self-Discipline, Achieve Your Greatness. Or if you want to get a signed copy, go to my website, wordedtobegreat.com here in the U.S. and get your copy, and I will sign it. I would love to send a message to you to show my appreciation for you showing support.